This is the magic, literally, device that I want to talk about today. The Blackmagic Pocket Cam OG. This is one of the most simple cameras I've ever used in my life. It's one of the most easy to carry around cameras I've ever used in my life. It shoots raw and looks very good. A long time ago, I got one of these and shot a lot of work with it. Fast forward maybe 10 years, I needed to get one back in my hands again, and here it is. It is smaller than I remember, but that is one of the things that I like about it. I just have this one Lumix, Panasonic, pretty hot in the YouTube drama right now. This is a Lumix 14-42. It has a zoom rocker and a focus rocker. Have a little variable ND on here. I want to just think about and reflect on simple filmmaking and touch on a little bit of the menu. Not that it really matters, but it's kind of part of that simplistic approach to making an image that I cherish very much. There's two reasons why I wanted to get this camera back in my hands. One is because I do like to walk around on the streets with a camera, and I'm not going to walk around too far with the Alexa because it's heavy. I had an FX3 for a while that was amazing to walk around with, but there was something about it that lacked the bare bones, no menu simplicity that I really enjoy. Here and there, for certain things, I like to barely interact with the camera. I don't want to change any settings. I don't want to worry about codecs. I don't want to be confused. I want to know where everything is, and I just want to make images. That's how it is on the Alexa, and that's how it is on some other cameras, especially film cameras. On this, it's like that too. And all of Blackmagic cameras are very simple, and I appreciate that very much. It kind of makes you think more about the image that you're making rather than any type of settings. It's not your phone where you can, while you're filming, be receiving text messages, even though the phones now have great quality. You can attach pretty much any lens to this and just focus on what you're looking at on the screen and the image that you're making. Look at this sensor right here. Look at this in my hand. So I'm going to turn this on, lens pops out. Look at this back screen. You have all the pertinent information up here, waveform, remaining time, and your audio here. Up here is your playback. Not too many buttons, not too many complications here. Look at this menu. This is the entire menu. Your metadata, birds of the wetlands is the default. I don't know if they still do that, but it always brings back some memories when I see that. You have your format card, focus peaking on and off, meters, and your frame guides. This would be your meters, which you can also just put up and down like this. Our settings, very simple, ISO, white balance, and shutter angle, and then you have some audio settings here, and then you can record in RAW, different flavors of ProRes, video is Rec 709, film is log. Then you have your frame rate, max is out at 30, I'll keep it here, and a time-lapse interval. For your display, video means you're looking at a Rec 709 LUT. Film means you're just looking at the log. Zebras, I set them at 90. Frame guides, I like walking around looking at 239. It's so simple. Similarly to going out and shooting on a single prime, like a 35mm or something. You zone in and you learn something. If you go out and shoot with a single prime, you can know the difference between a 35mm and a 32mm. Like you can get to know the feeling, the difference in the feeling between those two lenses. So walking around with a simple camera is similar, where you can get to know the difference between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. There's nothing for you to worry about besides what you see on the screen, and it's simple. The single only issue that I do not love is the aliasing, but it's okay because what I'm working on when I'm using something like this is just like analysis. You can, of course, use this for a shoot, but I do believe that there are better cameras out there today that are way more versatile that you could buy and use for multiple different things. Like the full frame Blackmagic, the L mount is $1,500-ish right now. That is probably one of the most insanely priced cameras ever. And if you're buying a camera, I would go for that over trying to buy one of these. But if you already have the cameras that you need to do your job, having one of these is just like, it's a classic. Look at this thing. It's just a classic tank of a tiny little camera. There's never been anything else made like this. The most frequent question that I've ever been asked, even before posting on YouTube, is which camera should I get? There's two answers that I give, and it's just based on the person that's asking the question. For the aspiring cinematographer or director, I always recommend a camera that is simple, like this. Occasionally, if they mention their needs, I do recommend like an FX3 because it has great autofocus and low light performance, but it is so versatile and has so many different options and so many complicated things in the menu. If you are aspiring to shoot movies or commercials at a high level, you kind of don't want that. The amount of times that I've used autofocus in the last 4 years is maybe like 6 days. So autofocus is not something that's like used a lot at a high end, nor is a 12,800 ISO. It's convenient, but you should learn how to do it without that, and you will be able to tackle so many different scenarios, knowing how manual focus works, knowing how to light a scene at a proper ISO, and not being too bogged down by a million different settings in the camera and focusing on what's actually important. And this was kind of like my first step in that process of like, what can I get that's the same as a Red camera or the same as an Alexa, the same workflow, but not for the price of those two cameras. And this was the answer back then, and they still make the answer to this day. It's kind of like the rule of thirds. I hate looking at the rule of thirds. I never have it on the monitor. I hate looking at anything in front of the image that I'm making besides just a little crosshair. You can use the rule of thirds. It's great to understand the rule of thirds, but once you understand it, then you break it. You have to understand how focusing works. You have to understand manual focus, and then you can have an answer for when something might need autofocus. I'm talking about shooting movies and commercials. Same way as like watching movies that were shot traditionally can help you in your cinematography journey, whereas TikTok is not going to help you in your cinematography journey, at least in terms of the images that you see. In my journey to figure out how to succeed on TikTok, yesterday I found out that you should definitely not post back to back to back to back to back. So when you have some limitations like no autofocus, no insane low light performance, 1080p, and you practice with that, or you go out on the street and shoot something with that, you're forced to make something good without any help. And it's actually a more fun process rather than just pointing your camera at anything and just not even having to look at the screen and having really no intention behind it. Where if you're walking on the street and you see a crazy scenario happening in front of you, which is something I happen to see in New York all the time, typically I just capture it on my phone. If you have a camera in your hands and you're like, oh, this thing is passing by the street, I want to capture it, and you have to get everything in focus and nail it, the times that you don't nail it, that hurts. So then you think and you're like, I need to do this to be able to nail that next time. So it's a process that makes you better. Anything that I've ever shot on any camera, from this camera that I used on a lot of stuff way back in the day to the Sony FX3, Red cameras, other Sony cameras, the Alexa, anything that I made a long time ago and I look back on it today, I never ever think this is low resolution, this has moire, this doesn't have enough dynamic range. I always only ever see I lit that well, or I lit that bad, or I framed that bad, or I framed that nicely. So in today's world, where there's cameras coming out every single day, and there's people asking me all day long that already have multiple cameras, like which camera should I get? Oh, should I get this one? I do like cameras, but when you look back on the work that you make, you never think about what camera it was shot on. You never think about like any of the technical aspects of what happened outside of the lighting, the action, and the composition. So practicing with something minimal and shooting in a way that is kind of like mimicking like how it's like to shoot on film is valuable and can make you better. That's all I got. Peace.